What is up, my AP students? Hope everybody is doing well and had a really nice week. Quick recap this week, hopefully keep it under 5 minutes or so. So I'll go ahead and get going. Before that, though, I did post the multiple choice questions from your most recent test. So if you want to go through those, you have your answer sheets as well. Again, I went through them in class, but if you need clarification or something, please just let me know. Also, general notes with LEQs. We got to get a little bit more complicated with our theses, with our claims. We got to get a little bit more complicated and not just rewriting the prompt. We actually have to make an argument that establishes a line of reasoning. But we'll do a lot of practice with that. All right, so we started Unit 4 this week. It's a continuation of what we had left off of with President Washington, essentially leaving us as a neutral country. Leaving America with some warnings about political parties and, not interfering with Europe and things of this nature. Obviously, we don't listen to him, right? Anywho's, John Adams takes over next as President of the United States. He's also a Federalist. He's going to be the last Federalist that is President of the United States. They really weakened throughout early Unit 4. We talked originally about the differences between Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists become the Democratic Republicans. If you want to check out the infographic on Google Classroom that takes you through American political parties, that I do find to be quite helpful. Anyways, our Democratic Republicans are led by Jefferson, Madison, and James Monroe. They are much more about the rule of the people, so they support things like the French Revolution because they were killing nobles, they took out the king, they were the power of the people taking over the country. The Federalists were incredibly frightened and scared of the French Revolution, obviously because they are like the wealthy elite party, which is who the people were getting killed in France, were the wealthy elite people by like your regular public. So anyways, the Federalists are very afraid of that. In response to this, and in response to a lot of criticism of his presidency, John Adams passes the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien Act makes it more difficult to become a citizen of the United States for a small period of time. We have a lot of issues and problems with immigrants throughout our entire country, spanning from Irish and Italian hatred to obviously issues today with like Central American immigration. The irony of the entire thing is the only group of people in this country that aren't immigrants are Native Americans, which leads you to like, why do you hating on other people? But, that always happens. So, the Alien and Sedition Acts, right, made it more difficult to become a citizen in the Alien Act. And the Sedition Act, of course, makes it illegal to speak out against the government or criticize the government in major ways. Obviously, pretty unconstitutional, considering that you basically pass the First Amendment, which is, the right to free speech. So not being able to speak out against the government is a huge problem. Also, the French Revolution is really freaking us out. Adams tried to negotiate with the French. He sent over an ambassador, John Marshall, who becomes important in a little bit, right, to go negotiate with the French. Then this is our XYZ affair where the French officials look for a bribe from the American government in order to meet with their government, showing that there's no respect for the Americans. There's no, we consider you to be a strong or worthy country or, important enough to be able to just meet with our guy. You have to pay a bribe first. So, obviously, that really infuriates the Americans, leading to a quasi, naval war, trade war between France and the United States that lasts, a short amount of time. Anyways, in response to things like the Alien and Sedition Act, Kentucky and Virginia passed resolutions that talk about nullification. Nullification is states believing that they have the right to supersede federal government power. We know this isn't true because of the Supremacy Clause, but this will all come to a head later in this class. Trust me, it does. But it does bring up the question of who has the right to decide what's constitutional and not. Who would, in theory, have the right to tell us if nullification is legal or not because of the Constitution? That all comes down to Marbury versus Madison. Right. So, again, to set the stage, right, Jefferson wins in the election of 1800. It's a big deal because we pass power from one political party, the Federalists, again, who are now pretty much done. There's no more Federalist presidents, to the Democratic Republicans without anybody getting hurt, without any problems or issues or major problems or issues, which is a really big deal. Again, transition of power doesn't usually happen in countries without death. Just look at the end of pretty much any monarchy ever, King Louis XVI in France. Yeah, so Jefferson takes over. This is, an election in which we also fix problems with the Electoral College, adding in that you have a running mate now, right? So you have to pick a vice president. No longer does the second place person become vice president, because that was taking up some issues and problems as well. And then obviously fixing the Electoral College in terms of ties. Jefferson ties with John Jay, I believe, in the election of 1800, and they need to break the tie. They do that by passing that into Congress. It's actually Aaron Burr he ties with. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's not John Jay, it's Aaron Burr. But anyways, doesn't matter. They go to settle the Electoral College in the House of Representatives. So that's also a big fix, right? Anyways, John Adams had appointed some justices to the government in order to protect Federalist rights before he leaves his office as president, and it transitions over to Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson, in his presidency, is obviously against giving these judges power, right? Because they're Federalists. He's not a Federalist. So they have a big court case, Marbury versus Madison, which we said is important because it establishes the practice of judicial review. The government, right, has now a new referee, a check, somebody who's going to review their laws and make sure they're constitutional or not, and that's the Supreme Court of the United States. That's really the important part. We can go into the whole details of what happened in Marbury versus Madison, but that's going to take too much time. Judicial review. The Supreme Court now has power, right? Continuing on with what Jefferson did as president, we know about the Louisiana Purchase, right? Expanding the power of the presidency is really the important part. We can talk about all the land and resources and Lewis and Clark and all the stuff we get out of it later. But really the important part is that Jefferson changes his mind. He goes from being a Democratic Republican who doesn't believe in strong federal government to the person that expands it more than the first two presidents who were Federalists. The irony of that's pretty interesting. But yeah, basically doubles the size of the country and is one of the biggest lasting things, that Jefferson's associated with a lot is the Louisiana Purchase. We also talked about the war with Tripoli. Remember, a lot of early American things are about, respect. Being able to, be recognized internationally as a country and respected as a country in terms of trade. These Barbary pirates, right, from Tripoli, the north of Africa, were not respecting American trade rights. We tried to bribe them. They, of course, took the money and kept hunting our ships down anyways because they're pirates. Which leads us to a mini war with them as well, fighting on the open sea. Again, all just looking for respect, all just trying to get recognized internationally as a strong, powerful country, right? Which, the Louisiana Purchase helps with that. Also establishing trade relationships and stuff helps with that too. And then lastly, we looked at Lewis and Clark. They sometimes get asked about the core of discovery. Why are they significant? They're the first people to sort of map and outline the Louisiana Purchase all the way to the Pacific Ocean, all the way into Oregon is where they end up, right? I guess the last thing I forgot to talk about was the term impressment. Remember, that's going to come up a lot. That also has to do with respect. Basically, other countries, forcing Americans, traders, merchants, or whatever who were shipping, to be in their navy once they captured their ships. So that's all going to continue and lead into the War of 1812 and eventually lead into something called the Monroe Doctrine, which we're going to pick up with next week in class. Anyways, it was a little over the 5 minutes. We're at 8 minutes now, but hopefully these reviews are continuing to help you guys for the people that watch them. And yeah, hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.